Senator Kaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Been very patient, Senator Kaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Mr. Secretary. I don't like responding to colleagues after they've left the room, but colleagues race to other committee hearings. I get that. Senator Mullen asserted that the angst on this side of the aisle is because we don't like President Trump. He has misstated the concern. I think I can speak for most of my colleagues who have concerns and say our concern is this. Have we learned nothing from 25 years of war in the Middle East? More than 14,000 U.S. troops and contractors killed. More than 61,000 U.S. troops and contractors injured, including one on our committee. Hundreds of thousands of civilian lives lost in Iraq and Afghanistan. $8.2 trillion by estimate is what the U.S. taxpayer has paid for the wars and the necessary VA care for those who've suffered and the debt we incurred to fund the wars. And so, you may criticize us for raising these concerns, but the nation, my Virginians, have lived through repeated deployments in wars that produced very little that people can see was worth that degree of sacrifice. To also make some corrections, for the record, the Iran deal was a bad deal. Well, both President Trump's Secretaries of Defense and State suggested he stay in the deal. He ignored their advice to get out of it, that it was going to lead Iran to a nuclear weapon. The first paragraph of the deal, Iran committed that it would never seek develop or acquire nuclear weapons. That was a forever promise that could have been enforced until President Trump tore up the deal. There was an assertion that, President Obama took us to war in Syria in 2013. No, President Obama proposed military action in 2013, and Democrats forced him to bring it to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee because we said you don't have the authority to wage war without a vote of Congress. We have upheld this constitutional standard against Democratic presidents, and we're going to uphold it pursuant to our oath against a Republican president. So that's what we are worried about. Have we learned nothing? We hope that this will not be a war that will lead to so many casualties, but 6 families are already being informed that their loved ones will never come home. And it may well be more than that. Mr. Colby, the National Defense Strategy, as the policy lead at the Pentagon, you play a key role in draftsmanship discussion, but then it goes up the ranks and it gets approved by the Secretary and it also gets approved by the President, correct?
Certainly, I think it's fair to say, I would say this strategy has been more extensively coordinated, not only within the department, but at the White House.
But just in terms of approval, this does not get published on January 23 without the Secretary and the President saying, I'm fine with this.
I wouldn't get specifically into the specifics of coordination. Obviously, it's signed by the Secretary of War.
Yeah.
It's on his statutory responsibilities.
Okay.
But I would also say I would assert that this is the most extensively coordinated defense strategy.
So the Secretary of War is not going to issue it unless the President agrees. Now, this was January 23, 6 weeks ago.
I would say we don't do anything, and certainly not something as significant as this without being aligned with the President. We pay a lot of attention to that.
So you've agreed with me and taken 10 seconds of my time to do so. So, the National Defense Strategy no longer will the department be distracted by interventionism, endless wars, regime change, and nation building? Venezuela and Iran. I'm not going to ask you whether or not that's interventionism because I'm not going to embarrass you by making you try to say that it's not. It's interventionism.
Warren, so
it's interventionism. Second, we hope it's not endless war, but we don't know how, in particular, Iran's going to go. Third, is arresting Maduro and killing the Ayatollah, is that regime change?
Senator, I don't think the Venezuela Operation Absolute Revolve is a perfect example of how we're not getting.
Just answer my question.
If I may respond earlier, I think absolutely we have learned the lessons, and I thought Secretary Hegseth expressed that very well yesterday.
Is the arrest of a foreign leader and the assassination of another, is that regime change, contrary to what you said 6 weeks ago in the document?
Well, what I would say is that both operations have learned the precise lessons that you're talking about.
Is it regime change? You can answer that question. Do you change a regime when you arrest or kill the president?
Of the issue. I mean,
well, how do you?
I don't know. I think it's an interesting debate, but I think in the case of Venezuela, there's no change in the government's
let me just
behavior.
say then, you are uncomfortable having your own words read to you, and you're uncomfortable saying that the
not uncomfortable,
assassination of a
Senator.
leader
Perfectly
and the
comfortable to
arrest
have
of
the
a leader,
discussion.
you won't acknowledge that's regime change. I think that's very instructive to those listening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.